Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Takeaway Club, where I talk to interesting people across different walks of life to get to know their stories and, more importantly, how they got to where they are, including their motivations, habits, routines, and aspirations, some of which we can apply to our own lives. Hey, before we get into the episode, a quick update. Along with the podcast, we now have a newsletter. It's called Beat the Blues, a bite sized curation every Monday with the most interesting and random content that I come across in the week prior. Earlier, I used to do this in an ad hoc manner, sharing an article, giving book recommendations to my friends. That's when one of my friends suggested why not do this in a more organized fashion. And that's why we turned this into a weekly newsletter. It's a small, non intrusive email every Monday with a bulletin of whatever content I am currently into. It could be the books I'm reading, the podcasts I'm learning from, tweet threads that I enjoyed, just a small boost to kickstart your week, and hence the name Beat the Blues. So, if you're someone who enjoys insightful, random content but don't have the time to sit through and do the dirty work of browsing to find them, you're going to love this. It's super easy. Just head over to thetakeaway.club and hit the subscribe button, and you'll get the very next one. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Takeaway Club. In today's episode, I have an incredibly smart guy from the Silicon Valley. In fact, he's a recipient of the Einstein visa, which is given by the US government to attract smart folks into their country, people who demonstrate an extraordinary ability or expertise in any given field. So, Saiman Shetty is the person I have on the show today. Simon grew up here in India, Udupi in Karnataka to be specific, and in the US for his masters, and has since gone on to work in really cool companies like Tesla, Lyft, and Nuro. In his time in the US, Simon has co founded two startups, the first one being Hygiea during his time at the Arizona State University. Hygiea is a cool hardware slash software product which monitors garbage levels in trash cans. You could just set it up in your trash can and it immediately tracks and relays whether the bin is full or not, predicting how much time is left before it needs emptying, helping enterprises basically to manage their time and resources better. Hygiea was a huge hit among the peers and went on to win many awards in the college. The crowning jewel in Hygeia's history is perhaps the 1.5 year incubation offer from Plug and Play, which is one of the most respected incubators and investment firms in Silicon Valley. Of course, it has incubated the likes of Google, PayPal, Dropbox, among many other successful companies in their early stages. Simon is currently working as a technical program manager at Nuro, the robotics company that builds self driving cars for delivering goods. He's also building his second startup called resumepuppy.com, which is an online tool for building super cool and neat resumes. Given Simon's experience, this was a very thoughtful and truly wide ranging conversation. We touched upon his days prior to founding Hygiea, some of the mistakes he made on his way, his experience working at multiple world class companies, and how the company culture differs at each of these places, among many other topics. Without further ado, let's jump right into the conversation. Hey Simon,
Hey Krishna, how are you?
I'm doing good, Simon. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I know how busy your schedule is usually, given the number of things on your plate at any given time. So it's an absolute pleasure, man, to have you on the show here.
No worries, no worries. And I'd like to thank you for doing this. I think you're passing a lot of good messages to a lot of people. So thanks for doing this. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. So I thought a good place for us to start our conversation would be a short recap of your story so far.
Okay. So yeah, a real quick, my story is basically I start from I did my engineering in a small town in Udupi. That's where my parents are from. That's where I went to high school. Did my engineering from a college called Nitte. Uh, Udupi is in Karnataka, by the way. And then after that, I wanted to go to grad school to study more. So I came to Arizona State University to study electrical engineering, specialized in control systems. Then I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, to start my first job, which is in the field of control systems as a controls engineer. Then I hopped onto another place in Atlanta, which was like a relatively smaller business. Got a lot of good exposure there about like how small businesses work and stuff like that. Then this opportunity came for me to move to Silicon Valley to join Tesla. So I joined Tesla, worked there for around 2.5 years. So one of the most exciting experiences of my life till then. And then I moved to Lyft. So Lyft was starting their self-driving sort of efforts at that time. Lyft is the second largest ride-sharing corporation, service in the US after Uber. So worked for a couple years there, led a few programs when it comes to like building self-driving vehicles from scratch and stuff like that. After that, I moved to this robotics startup called Nuro. I'm a few months into Nuro now, and a lot of exciting stuff happening at Nuro as well in the field of robotics. Apart from that, along the way, I kind of founded two startups of my own. One of them was an IoT-based startup, that I founded like out of grad school. We focused on improving the efficiency of waste management. And then right now, amidst the COVID pandemic, I started with actually an undergrad buddy of mine, Anish Hegde, is Resume Puppy. So we are focusing on improving people's lives by helping them make really compelling resumes very easily. So it's a tech platform. Resumepuppy.com is what you can go to visit to do that. And yeah, our overall mission at Resume Puppy is to improve the efficiency of job applications, be it resumes or be it like any other needs that any job applicants have. That's our mission at Resume Puppy. Yeah, this has basically been my journey over the past decade.
Wow. This is amazing, man. This is like, you mentioned like so many amazing companies here, Tesla, Lyft, or even Nuro, and founding a startup. We'll talk about that in detail very soon in the conversation. These are achievements in and itself that people will be super proud of. For most people, getting a job at Tesla, that is it. That sort of is the end goal for people. The same goes for Lyft. You worked in artificial intelligence, electric cars, a couple of startups, you're in the middle of a pandemic, so you start a startup. So it's amazing, man. I thought before we get into more detail about all these exciting job roles, it would help if you could, give a little bit more explanation around your domain of expertise in, maybe layman's terms, if that's possible. You're a control systems guy, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
What exactly does that involve? What are you responsible for? Be it Tesla, current gig at Nuro. Yeah. What are you usually in charge of?
So in general, I'm kind of my whole background and the transitions have been kind of interesting. So by training, I'm an electrical engineer. So I find a lot of association with the core electrical engineering sort of activities in general. But then when I specialized for my master's, I specialized in control systems. So control systems is this very interesting sort of a bridge between like the world of physics and the world of engineering, and it involves a lot of like mathematics and modeling and things like that. So what I really found fascinating about control systems is the fact that it can be applied anywhere, like literally anywhere. Let me give you an example, right? Like, so if you assume an airplane, and what goes into automatically stabilizing the aircraft and maintaining the attitude of an aircraft right, so that it doesn't enter a stall or any other unfavorable scenarios, is a very sort of well-functioning control system that is implemented in the airplane, right? That's a very technical embodiment of control systems over there that you can see. When if you look at other applications, right, even in your daily life, or even in applications that are not necessarily engineering, you can apply a lot of control systems, which is like my professor at Arizona State. He was involved in a bunch of research, some of which were out of Wall Street, right? How do you model financial markets mathematically and determine the controlling factors for such markets, and then figure out like what's your optimum sort of what's the optimum investment that you can go in with for an expected result, given a certain risk, and still be left with money to invest. It's a huge topic in itself for in on Wall Street. The other application that he was focused on was in fisheries, right? So in fisheries, you have to maintain a constant population of fish in the fishery. You can't overfish, and you can't let the population exceed a certain amount as well, because they suffer from overpopulation. Resources are like severely limited at that point, and they start dying automatically. So you have a problem if you have a lot of fish. You have a problem if you have too little fish or no fish, right? So how do you play with the economic factors and all other sort of factors that you can play with to maintain the level of fish to a certain, a bit in the middle of two, a maximum and a minimum, right? So it could be like permitting, it could be like regulations around fishing in that fishery, and it could be around like breeding control, or it can be around like food and fish growth and stuff like that. So there are all these parameters that you can play with to control a certain scenario. So these are just three examples: the airplane, Wall Street, fishery. These are just three examples that I gave you, but then you can literally apply this to any field under the sky, or maybe even in the universe, so to speak. So that's what really fascinated me, the way that mathematical abstraction can be realized in technical forms or any other forms, and that fascination led me to specialize in controls. So that's the beginning of my sort of career, in controls. But then over the years, what happened was I being involved. So one thing about me is like when I get too deep into a certain topic, I kind of get bored. So what I try to do is like kind of diversify and try to learn more. So over the course of my career, I have like interfaced with software engineers so much, for me to understand how their side of the world works. I've interfaced with mechanical engineers a ton. So like thermal engineering and mechanical engineering, I've tolerance analysis and like modal analysis and things like these. I've kind of gotten a relatively decent idea about how things work in the mechanical engineering world as well. Same stands, throughout my career. There's been like business interactions as well, marketing and public relations interactions as well. So overall, like I've been fortunate to have like a very holistic approach along the way for me to understand like how things work in an organization. So yeah, that's basically how I sort of evolved through my career. Krishna.
That's interesting. So I got a chance to read this very interesting piece on the VC circle that covered your story a while back.
Mhm.
And right in the introduction, you probably know the article that I'm referring to, right? It's
Yeah.
a popular one about your startup Hygiea. So the article talks about how uh, every Indian kid arriving in the US has their sights set on a few milestones, which sort of acts as a proxy for success. Okay? And that is the safe and in many ways it's the same route to take. You know, you
Mhm.
are an immigrant from India, you want a nice job, you probably stay in the US for a decade and a half, and you come back to India. So that's sort of the life that most immigrants in the US take, right? So why risk everything uh, and try to be a maverick? Of course, that's something that you have done incredibly successfully now, but probably when you are starting out, what paved the way for you to choose this path as opposed to being a conformist and lead a happy, safe, comfortable life?
So yeah, the incredible success word that you use, that's kind of relative, right? It's probably an overstatement, but because I look at a lot of like other people, be it in Silicon Valley or in other parts of the world, in other walks of life, who have done and who have produced like significantly more, like infinitely almost more impact on society as we see it than me possibly. So yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I'd like to just take out of the way over there, just to just to put it out there. But in general, right, I think when you mention the concept of being a maverick, it's more of like there are certain things that keep people on their toes, right? And for me it is constantly learning something new and constantly being able to see and realize the direct impact of my work in the world out there, right? And that is what I crave for all the time. And I think the biggest so I look at it like this: the more I learn, the more I sort of nurture myself, the more I can use judgment to be capable of doing work that is impactful to the world. So for example, um, let's take the example of like Resume Puppy, right? So the impact over there was like, we really worked our asses off. We worked like super hard, but the impact over there was like in 3 weeks of release, we had over like 3,000 users, that signed up, even with $0 spent in marketing. All I did was, hey, we have this tool, do you want to use it? And I just posted that on LinkedIn, and we had like 3,000 users over 3 weeks. So this is what, these are the things that like really make me want to work harder, right? Because there are all these people using Resume Puppy, and the better Resume Puppy gets, the more sort of leveraged impact we make over a large group of people. So we had a lot of discussions, a lot of conversations around like, should we be a very manual resume review platform, and incredibly accurate in that, or should we like leverage tech and build a tech platform, right? So there's only so much we could achieve, or we will be able to achieve, especially for the crowd that we are sort of serving, using a very manual resume review approach, versus tech is something that we do. We are engineers, and tech is a very leveraged effort, right? You put the same amount of work as you put in a manual resume review for, let's say, like 15 people into tech, and then you have built a product that can be scaled up to hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, right? So that is the beauty of it, right? That is, these things I just find fascinating, right? and that's the reason I'm always looking for that next sort of bug to go conquer.
Beautiful, man. So I'll come back to Resume Puppy. Of course, that's what you're working on at present. So let's rewind a bit here and take you back to the days of Hygiea. Your first startup, of course, that's what started it all. It went on to win a lot of awards, a lot of personal accolades. What was Hygiea about?
Yeah, so in grad school, right, when I was in Arizona State, that's when it kind of seemed like, oh wow, there's all this like entrepreneurship. And Arizona State, by the way, is like super big on entrepreneurship and innovation. They have like millions of dollars of endowment and things like that to focus on those causes, right? So I was like, oh wow, there's all these entrepreneurship competitions with real money that you can win in case of in case of a cool idea. So that's when I really started thinking about different ideas that we can pitch and get some funding to get off the ground and do some cool stuff, right? I actually pitched one or two ideas in while I was in grad school, but those ideas were terrible and they didn't end up sort of getting any funding or like even reaching the final. So what happened was, after I graduated, I was still thinking about these things, right? And then I also had people who were also already in still in grad school doing their PhDs or whatnot. So I had a very close connections in the entrepreneurship and innovation department at Arizona State as well. So that's when once when I was just talking to my Hygiea co-founder. We were like, wow, okay, there's this opportunity in waste management. How about we just put something together? The biggest the biggest change that we introduced to the whole process what was that we just bought an Arduino, um, plugged a couple sensors onto it, and wrote some software and sort of made it work, right? And then we gave a live demo in the finals of the entrepreneurship competition, and that really wowed the judges because nobody else had given a demo of a working prototype, and that's what made us win the top prize over there. And that was actually the origin of anything Hygiea.
So what were the days like in the build up to you founding Hygiea? What was going on in your mind when you decided to solve that particular problem? Right? Because for folks jumping into founding startups, they tend to focus on mainstream stuff, like fintech, crypto, or maybe a classic B2B problem, a productivity tool or something. But a solution like Hygiea, to improve the trash can experience, that in itself is a very niche and an unconventional startup in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that all the decisions that we made or that I made even during the founding of Hygiea and the market that we focused on and all of those were among the best. I wouldn't say that because looking back, when I evaluate like the way Hygiea was done, I feel that it was done in a relatively naive way. There's a lot of things about like testing the market. There's a lot of things about like figuring out the right product market fit, and even in the industry, like figuring out your niche and going into that, doubling down on that, and driving costs down in case of like especially in case of hardware products. There's a lot of things around those that I only learned along the years, like after Hygiea or like while doing Hygiea, right? And that's basically Hygiea. The mistakes that I did at Hygiea was a product of extreme naivety. Now, when it comes to why, how we sort of decided to venture into waste management versus like all these other shiny things out there. There are a few reasons. One is, especially in the United States, there's the waste is or was being exported to like countries like China and like many other countries in Asia to be disposed, right? And it's a relatively questionable practice like that. But then China was also buying waste from the US, as were other countries. So this was the practice going on. So a few years ago, what happened was the Chinese government implemented a ban on importing of waste from the US. There were other governments that also followed that banned waste import from the US. Now, what would happen to that waste? It would end up in US landfills, right? That's basically what would happen. So we were basically thinking about, okay, so if this is going to end up in US landfills, and as is, there's this concept of diversion in waste management, where the amount of waste that you send from landfills into other ways of recycling, or even reducing waste in the first place, or reusing, is basically called diversion, right? So the goal was to reduce the amount of waste that goes into landfill to begin with, and we had to we had to handle a fundamental problem of how do we sort waste, right? And that needed a lot of capital. It needed a lot of like equipment, hardware to do the sorting, if we were to introduce tech that did it at scale, right? So we were like, okay, so that is a problem that is like relatively huge. Let's go conquer that problem next. So what's the problem we can conquer immediately? Where is it that we can save organizations money, right? So we were basically like, okay, so there are all these campuses. There are like janitors going around, like if it's like a big space campus or something like that, they would go around like acres of land, like looking for trash in trash cans and emptying trash cans. So we were like, and that's the reason we created these sensors that then hooked up to our gateway, and we had a nice sort of app that could show them the status of these bins. So that's the product that we made. Now the problem was that we didn't run the numbers accurately. So it turns out that this had a very small market in certain like high cost applications. In all other markets, we had relatively tough time pushing this and or justifying it, right? And because there is hardware involved, now you have to bring down the cost significantly, and that is going to be an issue as well. So yeah, there's a lot of concerns like that. So that's where we were like, okay, so we got to use the same product in an industry where there's more than just efficiency to gain, right? Because with only efficiency, we are not essentially able to completely prove the product. So that's where we were like, okay, so do we have a scope in like some sort of biomedical application, biomedical waste application, right? Where efficiency is not just the thing that they are concerned about. They are also concerned about safety, right? So the worker safety, the hazard, to bring their insurance costs down. There's a lot of implications over there, more than just efficiency. So we were like, okay, so can we make the same hardware or make some modification to the hardware, and then even the software side, and then introduce it over there? And that was actually a very good niche, right? It was like, okay, so cool. Now we are able to establish a value over here, but then that value, that niche value, is not necessarily scalable, because now we originally intended to cater to all these other people. How do we bring the cost of the device down to cater to all these people? So it's a scalability problem that we discovered as well over there. So yeah, to answer your question, this was the way the whole idea of Hygiea sort of evolved and ended up to be something.
Wow, that's amazing, Simon. I love how you're so candid about what happened with Hygiea and how you could have done better. As an entrepreneur, your startup is like your baby, and it's very easy to overlook sometimes what went wrong, and to realize that your baby is not perfect, but hearing from you, what you could have done better.
I think, I think that's a fundamental trait. It just comes naturally, and that's a fundamental trait. I think, like, entrepreneurs should have in order to make good products or services that is worthy of use by a large crowd. So I think that's it's a product of it's an inherent quality that entrepreneurs must have to actually create impact.
So very true, very true. And for folks who are listening, and all those people who have their ideas, still in the nascent stages, where it has not seen the light of the day, or if you're waiting for it to be absolutely perfect, this is a very nice reminder that even the most successful ideas may never end up being perfect, right? So the important thing is to just do stuff and see where things take you, and use the learnings and go on to build better things. So I'll move on to the next question here, right? You were a recipient of the highly coveted EB1 visa, or the Einstein visa as it's popularly known. Tell us more about that one.
Yeah. So again, so anything that I talk about the Einstein visa or any immigration related stuff, this is not necessarily like legal advice. So I kind of want to put that on the record, that it's not legal advice. This is merely opinions from my side and what worked for me, and my journey. So this is based on the fact that the United States is and will remain open for people with extraordinary ability, right? So that's what this category of green cards is about. People with individuals with extraordinary ability is basically what EB1A is, which is colloquially called Einstein visa. So it's very well documented requirements for it that you can access on the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services website. But in general, right, it says, okay, so if you have a one-time sort of lifetime award, right, like an Olympic medal, or like a Grammy or an Oscar, or any such, or a Nobel Prize, something like that, you can directly apply, and it's very likely that our application will be approved. But otherwise, if you don't have those, then you'll have to satisfy a bunch of criteria that they state on their website, which is including but not limited to you need to have a bunch of press, you need to have a lot of recommendations from people who have already established credibility in the field. You'll have to have evidence of original scientific or business or artistic contribution to the field. You'll have to have either in the form of patents or publications and things like that as evidence for those things. Basically, these are just touching the tip of the iceberg, but there are a ton more which are like easily searchable. So it lays a very heavy burden of evidence on the individual, and if the individual is able to demonstrate evidence of such extraordinary ability, then they will adjudicate the case in their favor. So this is basically how it works.
Wow. I want to talk about your time at the University of Arizona. Right? So now
it's Arizona State University. University of Arizona. I categorically corrected you there. The reason is The reason is because University of Arizona is a very hardcore rival of ASU when it comes to sports. So you come to ASU. The
Oh.
funny part is you come to ASU and you're watching a football match, and if the opponent team is Stanford, the amount of boo that Stanford gets is significantly less than the amount of boo a University of Arizona
My
team
bad,
gets.
my bad.
Right? So it's a very interesting thing. Like if anyone listening to this is going to ASU, that's what you got to watch out for, right? Look out for that game when the University of Arizona comes and plays at ASU.
Wow.
And that'll be a super fun match to go to.
I'm so glad that we are doing this virtually. Imagine, if both of us were on a stage or something, and in the end,
Not the right thing to say.
In a packed auditorium, I go like, "Hey, tell me more about University of Arizona."
Yeah.
I can imagine the rotten eggs and the tomatoes. Yeah. I'd be the recipient of. My bad there. Right. So, see, as a student going to the US for the first time, I've noticed this trend that one of the pillars of support is the teachers and mentors that you get to know there. Right? So, in that aspect, how was the experience studying under someone like Armando Rodriguez? Of course, if I'm not mistaken. So feel free to fact check me here.
Yeah.
But my recollection is he was one of the biggest factors in you making the decision to go to ASU.
So I knew, before coming to ASU that I wanted to specialize in control systems. Dr. Armando Rodriguez was what I liked about this professor, right? Is there's all these accolades that he's gotten and all that. Like he's a recipient of the presidential medal for excellence in science, STEM education, STEM teaching from President Clinton, and that there's a lot of accolades. He advises the committee for some defense committee in the U.S. government. And stuff like that. That's a lot of work, and NASA, of course, it's a lot of work of national and sometimes international importance is doing. But the one thing that I really found a connection to this person with was the fact that it's very hard to come across people who are technically super sound. They know their fields inside and out. At the same time, they're great educators, right? They know how to present concepts in the classroom in a very, very, very fun manner. There are videos of YouTube on YouTube, especially from times of the pandemic of Dr. Rodriguez teaching classes. You should go check them out. You can see that this guy is like a PhD from MIT, and he's super chilled out, and he drives the points home in the classroom. Super fun, always jokes, but he jokes in a way that drives the point home and makes that concept stick in your head. All right, that's one thing. The second thing is, as a person, a lot of people don't know his personal story, right? So he was the son of immigrants, grew up in extreme poverty in New York. There's a couple videos about that as well, him explaining that on YouTube, if you're interested. So there's more to this person than just what he does, right? There's a large part of his personal journey through childhood that has flowed into his charisma and characteristics as an educator. And part of the reason why he is passionate about the field of STEM education as well is because he has come from a very rough neighborhood in New York where 50% was the high school graduation rate and stuff like that. So that is a very social connection that he has, and that is causing him to be a great educator. So overall, to answer your question, when it comes to Dr. Rodriguez, these are the collection of things that really sort of impressed me. And I'm not even going to go into his technical technical capabilities, or him as a technical person, because that is proven inside out all day long. But I wanted to focus on that personal side, because these are things that don't come up when you Google his name directly, or like if you look his name up on ASU directory or anything like that. So I wanted to make a special emphasis about the things about him that actually stood out for me.
Wow, that's beautiful, man. And I hope he hears this, to see one of his students hold him in such high regard. I'm sure there'll be a lot more like you, but that's nice, man.
One more thing, going back to Dr. Rodriguez, right? So as a parting present, when I was graduating from ASU, as a parting present, I kind of gave him this little plaque. Okay, it was personally made by me, and it contained these it was a soldier, an Indian soldier from, I don't know, I think it's the 1500s, 1600s, something like that, with something that looks like a firecracker. But that was the first sort of advancement of missile technology. That was a soldier under Tipu Sultan who did that. Or it was under Tipu Sultan that, like, the concepts of rocketry, started. The concept of rocketry started to be used towards this whole concept of missiles, right? And this professor, he works on controls of missiles and things like that. So I kind of wanted to draw that connection of the origins of missiles in India and things like that to him, and it was a very sort of personal moment for him, and I think he still displays that plaque in his office. So yeah, that was a personal moment for me also, because that was where I was like, okay, yeah, wow, there's a strong connection of my culture with the history of what he does.
That's very beautiful. Yeah, it ties down something that is that both of you have fond recollections of. So at this point, I want to talk about the elephant in the room. That's your experience at Tesla. So which has attained a cult status, in the last decade or so, thanks to Elon Musk. So a lot of people, when I mentioned that I'm gonna have you on the show, they were very excited to know how that stint went, and maybe did you get a chance to interact with Elon? So what was your experience at Tesla like in general?
So there are a lot of intricate details over here that I can't go into. But in general, I feel like personally, right, Tesla and being part of Tesla at a very early stage, very early stage in my career, was it really helped me understand that rigor of being on a mission, right? So Tesla is on a mission to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, and that's a huge mission. Well, when I was at Tesla, just before the acquisition of Solar City, the mission of the company was to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable transport. And then they acquired Solar City and a few other like energy businesses, and then that's when they shifted their mission from just transport to acceleration of the world's transition to sustainable energy, right? And it's very important to look at the energy part, right? Because it may also be true that the automotive, like Elon publicly mentioned, right? The automotive side is more of the consumption of energy side. Plus, there's like solar roof. That's like there's the power energy products that Tesla makes, both at a commercial level and a sort of home, domestic sort of level. That the value of all those are also like incredibly high when it comes to the impact on society, to move society towards a more sustainable energy sort of future. And that's what's really inspiring, right? Like to take head on traditional automotive companies, to take head on the oil industry. It takes a large amount of guts to do that, and not just guts, and not just talk, right? That is clear demonstration of Tesla forcing the industry to march that way. And that, these things are coming back to my sort of desire and craving for impact. It's clear. It's clearly ties up over there.
So actually, while I was prepping for this call, I also happened to come across this amazing series from Tim Urban. For people listening who are not familiar, Tim Urban is a super popular blogger. He owns Wait But Why, where he breaks down the most complex subjects in very easily consumable manner. He uses these drawings. There is this very famous TED talk of him as well. So he actually got to write a 4-part series of blog posts about Elon Musk and the work he does. And in one of the posts, he recalls how I think it was SpaceX head of talent acquisition, if I'm getting it right. I'll anyway add it in the show notes for people to refer to. So it refers back to a Quora answer that this person wrote. This talent acquisition person who used to work at SpaceX. She describes Elon as super inspirational, and one of the particular instances was when SpaceX third launch failed. It was like a devastating blow for the entire company and for all the people who worked for years to try to make it work, and to try to send rockets as a private company. And she refers to Elon's infinite wisdom, and I'm just directly quoting her here. I think after Elon Musk gave that speech, I think most of us would have followed him into the gates of hell, carrying suntan oil after that. It was the most impressive display of leadership that I ever witnessed. So it's amazing the kind of impact that he's trying to create in the world.
Yeah, I think it's super inspirational, to say the least.
Right. So right after your stint at Tesla, of course you moved on to Lyft. What were some of the cultural differences that you noticed between a place like Tesla and something like Lyft?
Well, personally, right? Personally, I met a lot of people who came from Google to Lyft, right? And that was my first, because there were people who came from Google to Tesla as well, but then there weren't many people I knew of. And then before that, I didn't meet a lot of people from who have worked at Google. So I did not necessarily know the culture that they brought to work and things like that, right? And they bring a very, very sort of scientific, inquisitive, very positively uplifting culture. But at the same time, they, I feel like compared to Tesla, that amount of sense of urgency and that rigor was absent, right? And being at Tesla for the first few years of my career, and being driven by this incredible sense of urgency towards a mission, which I really enjoyed all the while, I was like, that was the mode I was in, right? I was going, like, I just wanted to like keep going, right? And when it came to Lyft, and when I looked at the culture of being, you work hard, but you also have a lot of fun at work, and a lot of like social fun. I mean, not like fun while working kind of fun, like not like working is fun kind of fun, right? More of like, you just hang out and have fun. That was actually a lot, right? And that's when I realized that, oh wow, okay, actually in most companies in Silicon Valley, this is the way the whole work environment is. What was going on at Tesla, and like what I was like, what I experienced at Tesla is in the grand scheme of things an exception. It's not a rule, right? So but I really enjoyed that, and that that culture shift was really surprising for me, and it took a while to getting used to, because I was always like in a mode where things have to get done yesterday, and like I was always in that sort of rhythm. So yeah, I brought a certain amount of that rhythm to Lyft as well, but then but then it at some point you actually have to sort of respect everyone around you. And so this was my personal sort of the difference that I noticed on a very personal level when I moved from Tesla to Lyft.
This is true. So actually, like I was mentioning earlier, when I mentioned having you on here, so there is this person, Hari Ganapati. So he's the CEO of Pick Your Trail. That is super popular startup here in Chennai. So he was very curious about your experience at Lyft, and he actually wanted to see if he could get your perspective on this question. See, so what was the single biggest narrative that people held on to that sort of gave them a purpose when battling against Uber?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that it doesn't. So all this doesn't happen just out of like pure will or like any sort of like inspirational power or anything like that, right? It everything has a very well executed strategy behind it. Now I won't go into the details of like all the strategy and things like that, but in general, like just answering that question in general, me as a person, I feel like there's, as a user of Lyft, right? Like when I use Lyft and when I use Uber to for my transportation needs, I feel like there is a clear distinction in branding, right? There's a difference in the tone of branding, and there's a difference in the way these two companies sort of project themselves to the crowd. And I feel like Lyft has the more friendlier sort of feel, but yeah, that alone is not going to like keep companies afloat necessarily. But there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are happening in a very strategic manner as well. That is clearly, I mean, as in the case of any other company, right? It's very important for the success of such tightly competitive companies.
Yeah, that's I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So before we head into the random deck, where I ask you a couple of very random questions that's got nothing to do with what you do in particular. So I want to talk about Resume Puppy. Of course, you touched upon it at the start of the conversation. Mention what you do. I'm curious about what the transition is like from building something like Hygiea, which requires a completely different frame of mind when working on the particular problem, to working on something like Resume Puppy, which is a more common, in a way, it's not that taxing, if I might put it.
So yeah, it's taxing in another way, right? Like for example, Hygiea was more of a hardware and a software. I mean, I think it was more hardware leaning than software necessity, right? I mean, than the software side of it. But when it comes to Resume Puppy, it's 100% software company. It's 100% tech company, and we want to evolve it as an artificial intelligence company, right? But what's like fundamentally important to us both value wise and impact wise, is people actually finding value in a resume made on Resume Puppy, right? And that is what we are trying to drive. Every time, like we chat internally that our customers or our users are our most valuable product managers, right? Because the amount of when you actually put a product out there, most people, what they do is actually a lot of people try to get their first sort of cut or first release, in case of like a software product, really nailed, like super nailed down, and until then they don't release, and then sometimes it's too late to realize that, oh, okay, the product had to be something else, or it's like you just lost a bunch of opportunity to change something from the grassroots level and incorporate that in your progress journey based on customer feedback. So when you put this out, like for example, Resume Puppy's beat like initial version MVP, right? It had a lot of a bunch of things that people wouldn't necessarily appreciate or like, right? For example, when you click save, a lot of times there were some corner cases which were not saving the resume, and the hard work of our users actually ended up not getting saved and stuff like that. It was very sad. So we had to and we had like just tens of users back then when we just made this public, at that point, like for 1 or 2 days, when we really really hard and fixed all those issues and made sure that our users don't have to be concerned about those low-lying things. And that's when the users started giving us a lot of suggestions, right? They are extremely, in a very positive manner, demanding, right? They bring out the best in us. Some of them are like, hey, we need version control. Some of them are like, hey, we need like better suggestions of software, resume bullet points. Some of them are like, oh, we need more templates and things like that. And all of these requests, when we look at them, we collectively evaluate them, saying what's the easiest to implement, what's the most impactful for them, and then move ahead. And a few of them we have already implemented, right? Like the sample bullet points for suggestions in experience section. That's a feature we worked after getting a lot of overwhelming sort of demand from our users. We are currently working on version control of resumes, and then we also got a bunch of inputs, requests about like having an automated review feature. So that is where we are investing a lot in our artificial intelligence engines now, to improve the way the computer reads the resume that people create on Resume Puppy, and make suggestions accordingly about like, hey, okay, you might want to improve this, you might not want to like keep this sort of tone over here and things like that, as well as, hey, you missed to mention a phone number, that kind of thing as well. So in general, it's like when you are interacting with a customer like that, or a user that is really giving you a lot of feedback, the tone also matters. The tone of the brand also matters, right? We always want sort of Resume Puppy to be a friend, because if people are coming to Resume Puppy to build a resume, it is very likely that they are looking for a new opportunity, which is like they are very enthusiastic. At the same time, it could also be true that they are desperate for a job, right? And for such a crowd, we always want to treat them with the level of respect and the level of care and empathy that they need. And that is where we spend a lot of our time making sure that everything that we build into a product is not just awesome on a tech side, but also is a very personal experience for our users.
It's very beautifully put, Simon. And like you mentioned, I actually checked out Resume Puppy, and I love the tool, by the way. So for folks listening, should definitely check it out. So I'm actually in the middle of just filling up my own one, and I really like the suggestions that the software put up. And it solves a very fundamental problem that is very common across all students, all students or people in their early careers. They they have their own achievements. They've done a lot of things, but somehow they struggle to put it into a structured format in a resume.
Yeah, so we realize that there's a lot of things that people, there are a lot of information that people supply on a resume that's not necessarily needed, right? So there are overall there's like two main aspects to a resume, right? Like there's the format, and then there's the content, right? So our goal is to make these two, or provide our goal is to provide our users superpowers when it comes to these two things. Right now we you don't need to be concerned about the format, and we are working on many more tools to come as well. But even as is right now, you don't need to be concerned about format. You just put your data in, and then the software automatically formats it to an industry accepted manner, right? And the software doesn't ask for details that are not needed by the industry. So in a way it streamlines what's needed, and just lets you put those things in without having to bother about like, hey, okay, will this work, will this not work? The you just take your focus out of what you sort of how to write it, rather you put your focus into like, okay, what kind of content should I create? And that's the next place we are innovating in, the content side, right? And the suggestions is a mere sort of super first step towards that. So I'm really excited about like what we have in the works. When I log into our dev server and when I like look at things, I'm like super excited for the future that we are currently testing. So yeah, I mean it's really interesting. So yeah, people who want a really elegant resume built, you should go to resumepuppy.com, and in case you have any suggestions, there's a little chat bubble over there that you can use to send us like recommendations or like feedback or any questions that you have about resumes, so to speak. Feel free to like throw those questions there, so that we can help you in that manner. So yeah, this is in general, this is like what we are trying to do.
Wow, it's amazing, man. And I think I've already like shared it with a couple of my close friends who will definitely
Yeah, and
find it helpful.
the one thing about the one like, be it Resume Puppy or anything else, right? The one thing about like super like well thought out products or great products is that um, it's simple to use. And resume, one of the things one of the constant feedback or the positive feedback that we get is that Resume Puppy is very simple and seamless to use, and it's very intuitive to use. The Whenever a product is super simple and intuitive to use, like this is one thing that I learned as a user and as a person who built products, right? It's not easy to make a product simple to use, and a product being simple to use is not a sign of the product being simple to build, right? Because there's a lot of effort, a lot of thinking that you need to go through to hide the technology that is actually running all this. Look at Apple, for example, right? When you use an Apple product, or an iPhone or a Mac or whatever it is, you don't necessarily, you feel like it's very seamless, and you don't necessarily see the technology that is behind it running it. And it's not because there is no technology, it's because there's like hundreds if not thousands of hours spent in making that technology invisible.
As we come toward the end of the conversation, so I have a couple of questions that I call the random deck. Right? I think I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So let me jump right into the first one. Now, if there was a universal billboard in every town in the world, and you get to pick what goes on into the billboard, what message would you share for the world? It could be a quote, a life lesson that you learned. It could be anything. What sort of drives you that you want to share with the world?
Yeah. So I would actually use that opportunity to put a collection, a few quotes that like literally have inspired me. So one of them is you know the quote from, I think it's the Whole Earth catalog or something, but then it became famous after Steve Jobs mentioned it in the Stanford address, right? Which is
Yeah, I know.
stay hungry, stay foolish, right? And I think part of what has driven me until now has been that philosophy. It's like, you know, I I I I I always find myself insufficient, and I want that next. I want to know about that next thing, and I want to like do produce impact in that way that in that additional way that I possibly can, right? And I'm always on the lookout for that. So that's one. The other one is for founders, right? It's basically yeah, you have thought out your product and all that, but that's, you can never think out your product enough, right? There's no enough. So just do it, like the just like the Nike slogan, just do it is what I would like to flash on that on that billboard. What else? um yeah, I think even in my personal life, when there's a large amount of questions about if something will work out or not, or you know um, even like when I have probably a new time management system in place or whatever, the best way to know is to try it out, right? Just go ahead and try it out. If it works, it will prove itself working. If it doesn't work, it's unworthy of being there. So yeah.
So I'll move on to the next one. What is an advice you would like to give your 17-year-old self?
17-year-old self. So I wish I made. So I wish I, you know, undertook a lot of. So I think this whole trial and error, or like just jumping and just do it kind of attitude, evolved itself, after uh, probably my second year of engineering, right? So if I have to go back 17 years ago, I would actually expedite my experimentation with things. I used to do a lot of experimentation with things, thoughts in general and like tangible things as well. But I would expedite that, so that probably I would have learned like twice as much in the same amount of time.
Right. Yeah. So the next one, from your circle at Tesla or Lyft or your current gigs, if you could nominate one person from your network to share their stories or experiences on the Takeaway Club, who would that be? Someone who has inspired you, someone you feel like it really have a story to tell, and worth every bit of time spending listening to that person. Who would that be?
No, I would certainly nominate my co-founder at Resume Puppy. Anish Hegde is his name. Phenomenal guy, like technical bent of mind, superb technical bent of mind. He in fact like built apps in India that have reached like hundreds of thousands of downloads. And like, it's very rare that you meet people that have a very strong technical bent of mind and also a strong sort of ideation capability on a product side, and also that user empathy, right? And I think he brings to the table all of these in a very well packaged manner, and that's part of where we both connect as well, and where it becomes seamless, running Resume Puppy. And that's a reason, right? There's a reason why all of Resume Puppy that you can see right now has been like the collective work of like 6 weeks, and 6 weeks is impossible for a structured company even to put this out, this kind of robust tool out. Apart from that, there's also the amount of users we've gained is actually testament to how well we have thought of the product. So yeah, I mean, Armando played a huge role in that, and yeah, I would definitely nominate him.
Awesome. So for the final question, this is where we kind of swap seats, and you get to ask me one question.
uh Speaking about podcasts, right? There's like these super quick ones these days,
Right.
uh you know and then there are all these like super long ones that are relatively less popular, but then like has the right crowd, right? Has captured the right crowd when it comes to like engagement and like depth and things like that. What I mean, I clearly see that you're a fan of like the longer format for multiple reasons, right? And I kind of want me included, your sort of listeners, to know why you are a fan of the long form, and why you do the long form, right? And I think it would be good if you can enlighten us with that.
This is funny because this is where most of my feedback comes from. Anytime one of my close friends or anyone listening, one of the feedbacks they come back with this, I'm not used to this whole podcast listening experience, which is natural because it's only getting mainstream now. I wouldn't say it's still mainstream even at this point, right? Podcast in general. So people are not used to consuming like 60, 80 minutes of audio in one stretch. Even our conversation now, it has crossed the hour mark some 10, 15 minutes ago, if guessing it right. Okay? But when I started listening to podcasts, my favorite ones were all, the Tim Ferriss Show, the Joe Rogan Experience, or Making Sense with Sam Harris. They're all, amazing podcasters, and their average length easily hits the 2.5, 3 hours mark. So that's sort of where I draw my inspiration from. In fact, a couple of weeks back, I wrote this very detailed blog post on why are my podcast episodes so long, answering the question that I get asked so many times. I put out like 5, 6 bulletins of reasoning why I do it that way, including something like, just take your example. Someone who has had the journey that you have had, it would have been impossible for me to sort of, fill that up in the 20, 30 minutes version. I'd be doing a great injustice to you if I were to fill it in 30 minutes, all your accomplishments, all your thoughts. So I feel like longer forms of podcast allow you the freedom to get creative, and it allows the guests to get comfortable. Most of my episodes, even this is something we might even notice in this episode, that I noticed this even for myself and the guests. The opening 10 or 15 minutes, that's when you're breaking the ice, you're getting to understand each other's perspective, what they're trying to do here, and for you to get in the right gear. That itself takes like 15 minutes at least, 10 to 15 minutes. If I were to do a 30-minute episode, 15 minutes would be filled up with a little bit of awkwardness, where the guest is not comfortable, the guest is not sure what you're looking for, and you're not really sure if the guest is enjoying what you're asking. So it sort of helps me to use the opening few minutes to set the tone for the conversation. And I've seen that the longer my episodes go, it gets better. With my close friends, I just call it like, I find most of my episodes to be like wine. The longer I talk with the guest, the better it sort of gets. So that is something that has worked for me, and that is the podcast I listen to. That's where I drew my inspirations from. Okay? So I understand that not a lot of people are a fan of this one, but I feel like once it gets mainstream, it becomes impossible for people to not see the value in long form podcast content.
Yeah. I mean, even in general, right? When it comes to non-official conversation, like when it comes to informal conversations, right? By nature, we are more driven. Like if you want to go to a friend's place to have like a good time, like an easy, like a chill time, you don't necessarily be like, okay, I'm here for like 15 minutes and then you get out, right? Like you just relax. the human nature of like informal conversation, the default nature is relaxed, right? And that's when all the creatives come out, and I think that's good. It's good. And listening to two people have this sort of relaxed conversation has always been a very nice experience for me as well. I'm a fan of the Joe Rogan experience, especially, and it's very soothing, and you can. It's not necessarily like, the Joe Rogan experience is not necessarily something you can watch over like a meal or something like that. It's more of like, I honestly I love watching that, like just before bed and things like that, because even the whole sort of aura is so soothing.
Very true. And
Yeah.
on a side note, you don't get to make Elon Musk smoke weed in a 15-minute podcast. That's never going to happen.
Yeah. Yep. That weed wouldn't get anyone talking. If it's 15 minutes.